I've been with the Envision Berwick Committee for the last 6 years, and this Great Falls Park, which has been dubbed the name of it, seeing as it's next to the Great Falls Dam, came up several years ago when we were doing a community charrette. We went on a walk, and this was kind of a place that we stopped and said, hey, this is a really nice spot. And then it turns out we found plans from the 90s where a landscape architect in school, Kim Myers, did a plan for it to become a park. So we said, hey, there's already a precedent for this. Someone else has also thought of this, so let's see what we can do. So the town acquired the land several years ago, and the land goes all the way from this side of this over here down the end of the street, and then kind of goes off adjacent, or right across the river from the mills in Summerturf. So the first part of our project was wanting to get a designer to come up with a design so that we knew what we were doing in the future. We kind of have this culture of like DIY community projects, everything from the community mural to like bringing back the Christmas tree. We like to do things ourselves, so we want to take that spirit and that initiative with this park as well. You can see there is grass here. I put down grass seed and clover seed last spring, and it has worked. And then also it is nicely trimmed this morning because Pat and Paul came down here and cut the grass. So it's that kind of spirit that we want to continue with this park, and kind of Cornelius will tell you about the design, but it's kind of a light touch design where we'll be able to do a lot of the stuff ourselves, which is cool. So, am I forgetting anything, James?
Yeah, that's a good summary.
Okay. So I'm going to pass it over to Cornelius, who is the landscape designer for the park. What?
We're all going to talk about the student context first.
Oh, sure. Do you want to do that?
Well, that's only one component of this park.
Yeah, okay, so I will also say, so this park is, we're thinking about it in terms of like kind of a long range plan. So we're in the first phase right now, which is just like coming up with a design and making it accessible for people. Thinking into the future, there's an idea for a pedestrian bridge that goes across to the mill, which has a historical precedent, which Paul will tell you about in a minute. And then potentially into the future, even connecting to other properties along the river and into the downtown. So that's kind of the long range goals for the project. Would you like to speak about the pedestrian?
Paul, could you come over here, please? Because if I go over there, I've got the river behind me and I can't hear you. You've got to be over.
I have to come over here. Quiet here too. Yeah. So this park will have several components, and some are recreational, some are historical, some are commercial, and we have learned from looking at old maps that starting, the earliest one we found is 1851, there was a pedestrian bridge that would take the people in Berwick that worked in the mills across the river, and they would walk across the pedestrian bridge and not have to get out to the bigger bridge down here. And we actually have an early map right there, and I can point out the pedestrian bridge to actually show you a few details of how it was built or where it was, looking at that map. We feel that once this park is established and we have better access, there's a nose of land down in the corner, down below, that sticks out well above the river, let's say about 40 feet above the river. And there was a bridge there that crossed to the mills, the Chinburg, that Eric Chinburg now owns, and that is both the residential as well as the commercial. It's pretty well established right now. Summerturf's got several years ahead of Berwick on what they're doing for their town. So we would like to get that bridge built, and we think that the commercialism, the people want this, the recreational aspects of it, the historical aspects of it, I think it would help both the Summersworth community and Berwick, and we want to get it done. So once the park is established, that'll be one of the next phases that we would like to have. Any questions on that? Because I forget a lot of stuff.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Serena. I'm going to invite people to, I know we said it a couple times, but to come even closer if possible. There's maps behind me that kind of help tell the story of this piece of land, or that we use throughout the design process, and I'm going to reference. We'll leave plenty of time after I'm done talking, so I don't talk for that long, so you guys can come up and look at them. But I would encourage you to come close enough to both hear me better and to kind of see some of the things that I'm pointing out in the maps. So my name's Cornelius Murphy. I'm a landscape and ecological designer. I've been practicing for about 15 years. I spent the last 10 years in Vermont, and I just recently, in the last year and a half, started splitting my time between Kittery and Vermont, and I'm starting to reach out and get connected to people here, and really excited to be brought in to be working on this project with Serena and the Envision Berwick committee. Serena and I are friends from some previous interactions up in Vermont, where she's studied and spent some time. My approach to design in general focuses on like a really in-depth study on the place and the existing systems and infrastructure. And so the design process that we went through for this piece of land involved the creation of a base map, just to kind of show some basic conditions of what's existing on site now, which is sort of this first map here. And then a couple different series of studies. There's actually a third map that goes along with that, just focusing on the aspects and existing systems on the site, so that they can inform the design, so that we're not just trying to dictate the way things go on the site, but we're working with those systems in general. So one of the first things you'll notice about this, and what I'll do is I'll just kind of I'll walk through the design process that we used, just to give you guys kind of an update, and then that's kind of what's behind me here, is all the process that the committee and the community and myself went through. And then in the far tent is the actual sort of most current design proposal, and I'll spend some time kind of walking through that as well. And after I'm done, there'll be a tour where we're going to invite you guys to stick around, and we actually have a couple of the perspectives and design proposals that are pinned up in those different locations, so you can get an idea of the way the proposal would look. So one of the things you'll notice about the park is, obviously we're right on the river, so that played a really important component to the design of the project. It's also incredibly steep. It looks like we're walking off the edge of a cliff when we get to the edge of this clearing. There's really only 3 or 4 small benches of flat, usable land. Most of them occur essentially along the street, and then there's one, if you go down to what we call the southern part of the park, you go down a very small incline, and there's a very large bench of open land that leads to the pedestrian, or the former spot of the pedestrian bridge that Paul was talking about. There's also been a lot of, it might not seem like it because it's a very raw piece of, it seems like unused land, but there actually is quite a bit of activity on this land, which this second map speaks to a little bit. The areas in red are the places that are not really used at all. Areas in green are the areas that we see some, what we consider quote-unquote heavy use for a passive space like this. So there's footpaths that wind their way all the way down to the river, especially on this north end and especially on the south end. There's signs of, there's trash, and there's additional footpaths, and there's large clearings that sort of show the different activity areas where people are using the park currently. And so what we tried to do was really base our design on those areas that are already existing for human use and for human traffic. The other piece about this park, like I mentioned before, the river, is that there's a significant amount of restriction. There's a 75-foot buffer. It's actually a riparian it's not a flood zone, it's not a floodplain buffer, but it's a use buffer that we are not really allowed to do much in at all. And a majority of that park actually falls within that 75-foot buffer. And But interestingly enough, the flat areas that I mentioned that are kind of along this road happen to, most of them, a good chunk of them happen to be outside that 75-foot buffer. So most of what you'll see in the design proposal and in the schematics focuses on leaving the 75-foot wide buffer essentially fully intact. The Salmon Falls River has actually been identified as one of the most threatened, if not the most threatened watershed. James, is that correct? The most threatened watershed in the country, and that has to do with two different factors. One is the amount of people that this watershed serves for drinking water, and the second is the threat to development, quote unquote threat to development. So this being a public park, the Salmon Falls being a very threatened watershed, how we manage, treat, and integrate stormwater into this site, to us, to the committee, to me as a designer, has a large precedent. And so that's one of the things that we really want to focus on in this part of design, and it's a significant part of the proposal.
Where are we? Where are we?
So we are sitting, I'll use the base map. This is the clearing that was done from the recent work. These two big riprap swales either side of us is the recent work that was done on the roads and stormwater. That's this big clearing here in the northern part of the park. That's right here, where we're sitting. Yep. And when we talk about the southern part of the park, it's basically a walk down Moulton Street. Moulton, am I saying that? All the way to the end, and right at the end, you'll see there's also some recent work that's been done there with some riprap. There's a steep incline. If you walk down that, you'll see a footpath. You walk down that steep incline, and there's a really big, broad bench of land with a little bit of a clearing. And that's kind of what we refer to as the southern part of the park. In between those two use areas currently, there's just this sort of very raw, quote-unquote wild strip of land. It's very wet, it's overgrown. It's really hard to manage from any kind of use standpoint, so we've kind of pulled back from that area altogether and really focused most of the activity on this northern part and on that part down to the south. With the potential to connect the two, maybe through like a really light footpath, if someone really wants to get in there and do some hard work. But really we're trying to focus most of our attention into the areas that are easily worked with. And so yeah, so that's the analysis phase. I kind of presented this analysis to the committee, to the community. We had a sort of a community-wide charrette where we talked about different designs and considerations for the park. Came up with, the community essentially came up with a design concept. I assembled all these different comments and feedback and kind of put them into one sketch. And that really involved, like I said, focusing on these two areas, the north and the south. Both have a sort of two different types of character. You'll notice, and I forget who made the point, but this north end has a very sort of public feel to it. It faces Sawmill, it's connected kind of to the downtown area. But as soon as you turn the corner, and you'll notice, hopefully you come and tour this later, and you walk down Moulton Street, it turns into a completely different character. It's much more of like a neighborhood feel. And it's very true of the river as well. The river up here by the dam is very active. It's very noticeable. It's kind of right in your face. It's very high energy. But then you get down to the southern section, and the pace of the river slows down, and it becomes a very sort of different setting. So what you see is like older kids, kind of more adventurous people, kind of interacting with the side of the river up here to the north. But down below, you see a much more passive use where like little kids, they're kind of run back and forth across the river, where you can spend more time and just kind of like hang out. And so that's kind of dictated how we look at the two different areas, the north and the south. The north portion of the park, we're really looking at potentially becoming a gateway and really sort of opening up the attention to the community to this space as both a way that you come into downtown Berwick along Sawmill Hill, but also as a way to kind of engage more with the river and with the space as a whole. And then the southern portion of the park is really focused more on becoming a sort of a passive, more slower recreation space that's geared towards kids, like integrating national play features, allowing more access and creating some small sitting in or gathering areas where people feel kind of hang out. The other big community concept that we discussed was one that Paul touched on briefly, which is the idea of connecting the towns of Berwick and Somersworth, both from a, like sort of a user-friendly standpoint and pedestrian access, but also potentially to create sort of an economic engine and create more significant interest and opportunity for both communities. And that would involve the existing bridge that's there now that crosses the river, new sidewalks that would connect the downtown and go along the edge of the park, dropping all the way down to what we call the south entry of the park along Moulton Street, connecting to a potential pedestrian bridge and tying back into the mill across the river and going back up into the downtown Somersworth. And then the other piece that we kind of, I put out a bunch of different proposals. Essentially, we have 3 different schemes that I worked up based on this community concept. From A to C. A is like the lightest touch. C shows essentially like the most intensive development and the largest amount of work or impact on the park. And after presenting these to the community and to the committee, what we landed on was something much more closer to A, which is a very light touch. So, like I said, kind of staying away from some of those areas that don't allow a lot of existing use, and creating a space that could largely be managed sort of by the community or by the group, and doesn't require a lot of upfront or significant investment, other than a couple of key features, which could potentially be tied in to public works projects, upcoming public works projects. So leveraging that opportunity that we have as a town to be able to get a significant amount of development done, the biggest parts of development in the park done. That's the process. I'd like to kind of take a second. Did I miss anything about the process that Serena or James and I want to touch on?
If you want to talk more about the sidewalks and the plan for... Yeah.
I'm Tom Wright, I'm chairman of the Board of Selectmen here in Berwick, and I wasn't planning to say anything. I was going to be a passive observer here, but first and foremost, I want to thank the Envision Berwick people, the volunteers over the years that have put the time and effort into this, and it truly is visionary. Nothing like this has been attempted in Berwick before, and I'm glad that we can all be a part of that. And when this was first proposed, and they talked about checking with the Public Service Company of New Hampshire and stuff, is the town basically said, yeah, go for it, because somebody once famous said they don't make land anymore, and they especially don't make pieces of land like this. This piece of land here is one of a kind along this area, because everywhere else along the Salmon Falls is being developed. And we want to make sure that this stayed undeveloped and usable to everybody. And as far as the improvements and things, is at the end of this month we're starting a traffic study that's going to include all of downtown, and we made sure that this section here was included in it, because making Berwick a walkable town is so important. We want to revitalize our town, we want to revitalize our downtown, and one way to do that is to create foot traffic and giving people a place to go, a destination to go. We don't want them just walking through town. We want them to walk about town and stay in town and enjoy our town. So, and I'm 100% behind everything going on here, and I think it's a great addition to the town of Berwick, and I can't wait to expand from here. And Great Works Regional Land Trust has acquired a piece of property down the river from us, and we're exploring every way possible that we can to connect the two. So then we'll have several miles of walkable space along the river, connecting Berwick, Somersworth, and all our communities together. So again, I want to thank the Envision Berwick people. It's been tremendous working with them, and I can't wait to see the next phase. Thank you.
So, thank you, Tom. I'll just turn your attention really quick. We've got, I do invite you after I'm done talking, which is hopefully very soon, to take some time, walk through, take a look at the maps.
We have sticky notes too, and pens that you can write comments on and leave them up there, so that we can.
Yeah, we have some. Please take the sticky notes, comment on anything that you see that you disagree with, that you'd like to see more of, aspects of some of the schemes or the current design proposal that you enjoy or someone disagree with. The first 3 boards on this side are the different schematics. This is sort of the final proposal, this working master plan. It's also in a larger scale here. And so quickly I'll just talk through it. So where we're sitting, we're proposing the creation of that gateway space. A big part of that would be, if you notice how large the neck of this road is, on Moulton Road, you'd be reconfiguring the corner of this to allow for more green space as a part of the park. This is a long-term proposal.
Can you point to it on the map?
Yeah, so that would be, so this is Sawmill Hill Road here. We're sitting in the lawn area here. So what we're talking about right now, the road goes like this. What we're talking about doing is sort of reclaiming a small triangle of land just behind you there. With that small triangle of land, we'd use that to do sort of some signage potentially, just welcoming people into the park and also to the town of Berwick. There wouldn't be any significant infrastructure here. What we're talking about doing is putting in a little bit of benches, maybe a small footpath around the edge, some light boulder work, and some planting. We also have a very small access, so you can make it out a light foot trail that goes down into the river's edge. So we just sort of grade, plant, seed, and manage that a little bit more. Where possible, make it a little bit easier to get down to the river's edge without doing any sort of significant work. Do some light clearing of vegetation. And then just clean stuff up as well. So on the very north part of the park, what's shown here is that in this flat area, hopefully removing that big chunk of asphalt, but then also creating like a small footpath that goes along the edge to again create like some small seating areas to be able to view the river, cleaning up the vegetation, potentially doing a little bit of planting as well. South of this small gateway area, so going down Moulton Street, you can see we've got another bench of land just here where the 2 locusts are, this flat area. Clearing that out, which is this small lawn area that we're showing here, as part of those public works projects, that sidewalk would extend down along that area. We have the opportunity to widen the road a little bit and allow for roadside parking. And then closer to the river on the other side of the parking and the sidewalk would be a small passive open space, a lawn area that people could use to gather or sit or recreate a little bit. Further south from that, basically going all the way down into the end, there's another small stretch of road that we could widen to allow for additional on-street parking. At that point, what we'd like to do is all the stormwater here essentially collects into these 2 big riprap swales that have been done recently. Starting on Moulton Street, right about here actually, and going south, all the river then heads all the way down to the bottom of Moulton Street and actually drains down this way into this swale. So what we'd like to do is catch all this water coming down Moulton, throw it into a small file swale in between the parking and the sidewalk, so it's pre-treated before it gets into the river. And then we're introducing a small detention basin that in large storm events, most of the time would stay dry, but in large storm events would capture and treat stormwater before it actually heads into the river, minimize erosion, increase water quality. And at the same time, because of that big incline that we have going down into the south portion of the park, we introduced a universal access pathway so that everybody can get down there very easily as opposed to making this abrupt transition down into the southern edge of the park. And then in that flat area, that flat mention plan next to the pedestrian bridge, what we'd like to do is complement that existing clearing by removing a little bit more vegetation, using some of the boulders and big trees, fallen trees that are down there to create some natural play elements for kids, creating more small gathering areas and sitting areas, and then again, with the idea of this historic precedent pedestrian bridge, creating sort of a riverside platform, like a viewing platform that would complement the pedestrian bridge. So that southern portion really becomes sort of like a significant space, and it's sort of a nice place to be. Further south than that, there's actually some really interesting old stone features from the previous mill that was here, and we'd like to kind of go in there and no significant work will be done in there, but we could go in there with some rock bars and some hand tools to be able to move things around and maybe make a couple of small play features or make access down to the river just a lot easier and more enjoyable. We'd like to be able to do that. I think that's the design.
Do you want to point to the perspective and the features in relation to the map?
So we've got at 3 different locations, we've put some stakes in the ground to show. I've drawn up a couple of different perspectives of different viewpoints of the park. Perspective A is showing what this gateway might look like from across the road where the fire hydrant is. That's the top perspective here.
That's where we are right now.
Yeah, we're sitting right where those people are sitting. Perspective B shows what it would look like in this southern entry if we introduce that universal access and kind of clear that space out for a small detention basin. Again, that's all the way down the end of Bolton Street, to the south end of the park. And perspective C is actually from within that southern portion of the park, down in that small play and active use area that we've identified, and looking at what that might be if we start to integrate some of those play elements. And then for these reference images, basically just refer to different features that are on the plan. So if some of you are familiar with what like a detention basin or a bioswale might look like, we've got some pictures of what some of those integrated stormwater features look like on the top. Bioswale, a couple of different looks of what like a curb cut bioswales and stormwater treatment along the roadside look like here. And then down below, we've got some images that show some of the different natural play elements that can be created just with simple boulder and trees and stuff. Those reference different areas that are
When you did intention on it, I know you have photos up there, but I think a lot of people probably think about the ponds that are made in the like suburb neighborhoods around here where they're building in a wetland and so then they have to make this pond and it's kind of just like how can you bury the pond. So if you could just elaborate a little bit more on what the detention pond situation is here that you're doing.
Yeah, so really the biggest precedent for what this feature might look like is everyone familiar with what a vernal pool is? There's vernal pools all over this area. They're basically small, low, wet areas that in a big storm get filled with water, and when it's dry, they're free of water. That's kind of what we try to mimic here, is basically just clearing a space, creating a low point in the depression where the water can be easily managed. Most of the time it would stay dry, but then when we do get large storm events, it would fill with water slightly. What we're advocating for, and you can see it in some of these pictures, is not your typical stormwater feature that's fenced off with chain link or some ugly fence around it, but one that's more integrated and has access as like a part of the development. So you'll see pathways that kind of weave through some of these photos of like how we can do this detention basin or to treat stormwater differently and integrated with pedestrian access. And those are the design precedents we're working with, not the ones that you see in sort of a typical strip mall or watershed.
But what about lighting for safety?
Yeah, so this is a vision for what this place could be. There's a lot more work that has to go into sort of like the detailed design and implementation.
I'm just thinking for safety, I've got 3 daughters. what I think of all days. Is
Yeah,
safety.
and so as part of a more detailed design, and really, there's from what I know, there's two potential significant public works projects that would be incorporated into this design. One is the sidewalk and pedestrian access, which would incorporate things like street lighting and signage, et cetera, and so forth. So that would address the safety question. And then there's MS4. Am I saying that right, Jake? MS4 is essentially state and federal funding for stormwater management. Is that correct?
Mandated.
Yeah.
Top phase, Laura.
Right. So it's a stormwater management development that could essentially assist with the creation of these features on the southern portion of the pond. But yeah, so the lighting detail will be something that will be developed as part of this pedestrian and public works access. Do you have any other questions?
Again, safety issue with the pedestrians walking very close to
Yeah, I do as well.
Please repeat the question.
The question is related to the drop-off. So inviting people to come too close to the drop-off. What happens if they tumble down? What I will say is that as part of that more, like I said, this is a vision. As part of that more detailed development, I mean, I'm concerned about it too. So there's an ongoing conversation that we'll have to have with the town of what, there's precedents in place for people's safety and considerations. Some of those are enforced by the town. Some of them we can just use to make people more comfortable. So there'll be a back and forth about what exactly that detail of those sitting and gathering areas look like on the edge of those steep spots. Low shrubs or potentially one small railing that people could, certainly when we get down to the southern portion of the park, when we talk about putting in a pedestrian bridge, there's a whole detail of a railing and the structural engineering that needs to be done to make sure that that's a safe place for people to be in before we move forward with the development of that space.
Because I actually have questions about the safety of this area right at this point with the folks perhaps walking there quickly nighttime and because it's close.
Yeah.
You don't know how long will it be before somebody notices somebody is sitting playing at home.
I don't know the answer to that question. But yes, we will, like those kinds of safety considerations, we are taking into account as we step through this process. The first phase, really what we're envisioning is, do you want to speak to this now? But what we're thinking of is, we're trying to put together a work day for September 22nd.
Oh yeah, sure. So in the same spirit of the whole DIY thing that I explained earlier, we're going to be doing work days for this fall and next spring and summer as well. So the first work day will be September 22nd, Saturday.
Rain date 29th.
With the rain date the following Saturday, the 29th. And at which point we will be doing, we'll have a work plan, but it could be anything from doing some seeding in the fall, planting, clearing vegetation, moving materials, finding those perhaps logs that we could use for play elements and that sort of thing, laying mulch, fixing some erosion control situations, anything else?
It's basically, what we're going to try and do is come up with a list of things that can be done by volunteers for this first phase to essentially make this space more accessible, more usable. And then, so that's phase one. We can do plantings, we can lay down mulch, we can do seed, we can move materials around, we can create small sitting areas on our own. And then the later phases, we're trying to integrate with some of these public works projects that might come online in the next year or two. So when the sidewalk goes in, for instance, we'll use this design as a precedent, work with those folks that are brought on as engineers for the project and try and get some of this stuff incorporated into the design, and that'll be built as a public works project. Same thing with the MS4 outfall. We'll do as much as we can in this interim phase to get this place prepped and ready. But then when we have the opportunity to integrate with these larger infrastructure projects, we're going to leverage that opportunity that we have to get some of this stuff done.
And so that being said, if you would like to come for the workday, we would love your help. We did one last summer and it was a lot of fun. It's about 40 people. We had gloves and that sort of thing. So there's a notebook right there where you can put your name and email if you're not already on our list. If you don't already get emails from us, put your email down so that we can keep you informed.
One thing that we obviously noticed today that is the crosswalk, especially considering that the House of Hope right across the street.
Right.
Is that you mentioned in the conversation that that's a possibility to be able to put a crosswalk here?
So what we're looking at with reclaiming this little corner of space on the road is the creation of two different walks. One would be just going across Moulton, because there is a little bit of foot traffic that goes across Moulton and then across the street, and the other would be creating a significant pedestrian crossing going from the House of Hope over to here as part of that, like reclaiming this corner. So necking it down a little bit, making it easier to navigate, and then creating signage, incorporating different type of paving, or at least some sort of color treatment to the surface to make that.
It can be tricky with the corner here cross.
Right. Yeah.
I want my dogs down this way all the time,
Yeah.
so I mean it's no fault of there's just a house there that you can't see. So just to be able to make it more visible that there is a pedestrians in this area.
Yeah, I think the sidewalk will help, like either a raised crosswalk or just a crosswalk with like paint or other sort of surface treatments, like you're saying, would make a big difference, as well as like any like lighting improvements that might come with the road.
I'd imagine as part of this next phase, like when we talk about there being work done, like a public works project for sidewalks and streetscape essentially, there's a lot of study and engineering that goes into that work. One of which is typically a traffic consultant or a traffic study, and they do things like based on the design criteria or design speed of the road at a certain distance, like they look at the safe stopping distances for a car with pedestrians coming across the road. So they'll look at things like, well, we might need to cut down that tree, we might need to take out this piece of vegetation, we're going to need to put a sign here, crosswalks should go here. All those types of considerations will be done as part of that public works project, integrated new streetscape and sidewalk project.
Yeah, the idea would be to make the connection from here to the green space at Prime as seamless as possible.
Are there any other questions? Okay, so I'd invite people, please, to take a walk. Well, first, take a look at all the maps. Take a walk and check out the different perspectives that are posted in the different areas. Perspective A, again, showing the gateway is right across the street. Perspective B is down at the south entry. Perspective C is further into the woods, right down that little foot trail.
It's 10 o'clock right now, so if people want to come up and take a look at the maps for 15 minutes at 10:15, we can lead a tour to look at the different sections. So 15 minutes.
Great. Thank you all for coming.